A new Hill-HarrisX poll asks, do you believe it is generally good or generally bad that lawmakers in Congress serve at the direction of their donors? Let's take a look at that. The poll found that Democrats were less likely than Republican voters to say it is bad for lawmakers in Congress to serve at the direction of their donors, 42% to 57% respectively. On the other hand, Democratic respondents were more likely than the GOP to say it is good for lawmakers in Congress to serve as independent voices for their constituents at 54% and 44% respectively. My guess on this is there are so many people donating to Democrats now that the 25%, all 25% of them are giving money. And they get so many emails from Democrats saying, we want your input, take this survey, that when they hear donors, they're like, well, me. So obviously, they should be listening to me.
Is that what the Democrats send out for fundraising? Because the Republican messages are like, you're about to lose your membership in Club Trump. Yes. Re-up right now in the next 20 minutes and get this free promotional, I love Trump, tickle me Trump doll.
Democrats do some.
I'm only mildly exaggerating, honestly.
Barely, yes. And like eviction notices, like you're about to be evicted. Final notice. Like there are some Democratic scam packs that will do this like final notice that makes it look like it's debt collection. We checked our records and you haven't contributed your share this month, and you have 24 hours to do so before the deadline hits. This is our final notice. It's in red. So there's some of that, but more often they're just trying to scare the pants off of Democratic donors about how if they don't give, in the next 6 hours, we're going to have fascism in the morning.
Right.
And the January 6th rioters are like at the gate. Yeah. And the Capitol Police need $5 in order to stave them off.
Yeah.
But there is
James Comey needs $5 to complete
to finish his book. But there is a collective sense that is built that these small donors are marshaling the resources because they did in 2018 and 2020 fund a significant portion of the Senate campaigns, for instance. And so they would say, like, yeah, they should be listening to me. And it's only 25% that say that. It's hard to believe, other than people who aren't paying attention to the poll question or like lobbyists themselves who would answer, oh, yeah, that's what politicians should do, is just do what their donors say.
Right. I do think, I would dispute even the premise of the question a little bit. Like, it is sometimes the case that donors are exerting influence on political figures. But also, political figures engage in, they have views to some degree. They make decisions, and then they attract support from donors who align with their views. So it's not always I'm some blank slate and will do whatever the last person to write me a check is going to do. It's I'm doing things, and then the people who like what I'm doing write me checks.
Yeah, it's not always obvious who is the parasite and who is the host.
we are the parasites. Yes. is what I am not a political donor to anything, but the constituents can be parasitic as well. So Definitely. Republicans were more likely to say they should obey their constituents, which that's not really surprising because Democrats, in some cases, I think, view their constituents as an obstacle. They're not all Democrats, but
they
the wokest
do.
and most progressive activists can view the constituents as a barrier to implementing the full Oberlin College agenda. But
well, in the 1980s, it was very common for Democrats to say that they needed to resist the influence of, quote, special interests. And by special interests, they meant civil rights leaders, environmentalists, labor unions, and women's rights organizations. Like, those were the special interests. Basically, their base, their coalition.
A new piece from the Independent Media Institute argues that blatantly corrupt politicians such as Kyrsten Sinema or Joe Manchin perfectly embody 21st century political corruption that was propped up by Citizens United, the 2010 Supreme Court decision that further tilted political influence toward wealthy donors and corporations.
Your favorite decision, I bet.
It is my well, I mean, it's so
many good decisions to choose from.
I'm a principled. It's not my favorite decision. That would be the video Scalia's wonderful defense of selling violent video games directly to children, and she said on First Amendment grounds we must do it. It's my favorite decision ever. Similarly, the thing about Citizens United is it is a First Amendment case. At something like Citizens United was the film company trying to produce a film criticizing Hillary Clinton, and existing law was saying they could not do that, and in the court. In the trial, there was a discussion like, well, what if it was a book? Are you saying the government, could also prohibit this firm from putting out a book critical of Hillary Clinton? And they were kind of like, yes. And then the court said, well, this worries us very greatly.
FEC blundered by making that decision and allowing that to go forward.
Right,
because,
exactly.
Like with Fahrenheit 9/11, that Michael Moore movie in 2004, he produced that movie with the explicit goal, and he said so on the show, in fact, of tilting the election. And that should be his right. The majority in the Supreme Court used that, I think, thing that we can all have consensus around to blow this massive hole in a century of campaign finance law. And so they should never have handed that grenade to a Supreme Court that they suspected was probably leaning in that direction anyway.
That was a bad move.
Bad move. Don't do that. Anyway, we will have more Rising right after this.